I spent 5 years inviting demons into homes. I didn't read about this in books. I didn't study theories. I performed the rituals. I spoke the incantations. I opened the doors. And now, I'm going to tell you exactly how to know if they entered yours. My name is Gabriel Santos. I'm 38 years old, and for 5 years of my life, I was an occult practitioner in São Paulo, Brazil. Not a curious dabbler, not someone who read about it online. I practiced Satanism with full commitment, full ritual precision, full intention to bring spiritual forces into the physical world. I know what I'm talking about because I lived on the other side. I was the one families paid to solve their problems through dark forces. And what I learned during those years keeps me awake at night, because I see the signs everywhere now. You need to understand something. Demons don't announce themselves. They don't knock on your front door and introduce themselves. They're strategic. They're patient. And they're looking for 3 specific signs that tell them a home is ready for infestation. Not possession. Not full manifestation. Infestation. Think of it like termites in the walls. You don't see them at first, but they're eating away at the foundation, weakening everything until the structure collapses. That's what demonic infestation does to families, to marriages, to children. And most people have no idea it's happening. I need to tell you about the first sign immediately. Because if you see this in your home tonight, you don't have time to hear my redemption story first. You need to act. The first sign is this: unexplained cold spots that appear suddenly in specific rooms of your house. Not drafts. Not air conditioning quirks. I'm talking about localized zones of cold that make no physical sense. You walk into your living room, and one corner feels like you stepped into a freezer. You're sitting at your dinner table with your family, and suddenly the temperature drops 10 degrees around you while everyone else feels fine. These aren't random. Demons create these cold spots intentionally. They target spaces where families gather because their goal is to disrupt unity. Living rooms, dining tables, kitchens where conversations happen, bedrooms where couples sleep, anywhere people connect with each other. Demons want to create discomfort, unease, a subtle wrongness that makes you not want to be there anymore. I learned this during my 3rd year in the occult. A woman hired me to perform a ritual in her home. She wanted financial breakthrough. She was desperate, willing to try anything. I won't go into the details of what I did that night, but I will tell you this. 3 days after the ritual, she called me in tears. She said her house felt wrong. Specific rooms had become unbearably cold, but only for her and her husband. Their teenage daughter felt nothing. The cold would come and go, but it was always in the same places. The living room where they used to watch movies together. The kitchen where they'd have breakfast as a family. It was driving them apart without them even realizing why. Her husband started staying late at work. She started spending evenings in her bedroom. Their daughter locked herself in her room. The family unity was collapsing, and they couldn't explain why they were avoiding each other. That's when I started to understand what I was actually doing. I wasn't just performing rituals for money. I was giving demons permission to enter spaces. I was creating spiritual doorways. And once you give them an inch, they take everything. Here's what happens. When a demonic entity is present, it disrupts the natural temperature of a space. It's not that they bring cold with them like in horror movies. It's that their presence absorbs thermal energy. Life generates warmth. Love generates warmth. Demonic forces are anti-life, so they pull warmth out of the environment. That's why you feel it in family gathering spaces. They're targeting the warmth of human connection. They want isolation. They want separation. Because isolated people are vulnerable people. Separated families are broken families. If you're experiencing this in your home, pay attention to the pattern. Does the cold appear at specific times? Does it happen when your family is trying to come together? Does it show up right before important conversations? Demons are strategic. They won't waste energy on random cold spots. They target moments of potential unity. potential reconciliation, potential connection. They want you to associate being together with discomfort. They want you to start avoiding the very spaces where love should flourish. The woman who hired me didn't understand what was happening, but I did. And it haunted me. Because I realized I had weaponized spiritual forces against a family that just wanted financial relief. They didn't know they were signing up for spiritual warfare. They thought they were getting help. Instead, I gave them an infestation. That case was just the beginning. Over the next 2 years, I performed dozens more rituals. Some clients were happy with the results at first. Money came, relationships rekindled, opportunities opened, but then the cold spots would start. Then the conflicts would escalate. Then the spiritual oppression would become undeniable. And I kept doing it because I convinced myself I was helping people. I convinced myself the ends justified the means. I convinced myself the spiritual consequences weren't my responsibility. I was wrong. And by the time I realized how wrong I was, I had opened doors in dozens of homes across São Paulo. Doors I didn't know how to close. Doors that demonic forces walked through freely, bringing destruction to families who had trusted me. This scar on my forearm? I'll tell you about it later. But know this. It's a physical reminder of a spiritual reality I tried to ignore. It's the mark of the night I learned that you can't control forces you invite in. You can't make deals with darkness and expect to stay in the light. And once you open certain doors, they don't close easily. These cold spots are just the warning sign. They mean something is testing your boundaries, seeing if you'll notice. If you catch it now, you can still close the door. But before I reveal the second sign, which doesn't just haunt a house, but destroys the people inside it, you need to understand the trap I fell into. I grew up Catholic, like most people in Brazil. I went to church on Sundays. I believed in God in a vague, cultural way. But when I was 28, I went through a crisis that shattered my comfortable faith. My father died suddenly. My relationship fell apart. I lost my job. Everything that gave my life structure and meaning collapsed within 6 months. And I was angry. Angry at God for not protecting me. Angry at life for being so cruel. Angry at myself for feeling so powerless. That's when I met someone who introduced me to the occult. He told me I didn't have to be powerless. He told me there were forces I could access that would give me control over my circumstances. He told me that God had abandoned me, but other powers would welcome me. And in my desperation, in my anger, in my pain, I believed him. The occult offers something Christianity doesn't. Immediate power, immediate results, immediate control. You don't have to wait for God's timing. You don't have to submit to his will. You don't have to trust in faith. You just perform the ritual correctly, and you get what you want. At least that's what they tell you. What they don't tell you is the cost. What they don't tell you is that you're not accessing neutral power. You're making agreements with entities that hate you, hate humanity, hate everything good and beautiful about existence. But I didn't know that yet. So I studied, I practiced, I learned the rituals, the symbols, the incantations, and it worked. Not because the power was good, but because demonic forces are happy to give you what you want if it means they get access to your life. They'll give you money if it makes you greedy. They'll give you relationships if they're toxic. They'll give you success if it destroys your character. They're not interested in your happiness. They're interested in your destruction. But they're patient. They'll give you years of apparent success before the bill comes due. And for a while, I thought I had found the answer. I thought I had cracked the code to life. I had clients. I had money. I had influence in certain circles. I felt powerful. But underneath it all, something was wrong. I started having nightmares. I started feeling watched constantly. I started seeing things at the edge of my vision that disappeared when I looked directly at them. My apartment, the one here in São Paulo where I performed many of my rituals, started feeling oppressive, heavy, dark. Even in daylight, it felt like something was lurking in the corners waiting. The cold spots started appearing in my own home. The same phenomenon I had created in my clients' homes began manifesting in mine. At first, I tried to ignore it. Then I tried to perform protective rituals, thinking I could control it. But you can't protect yourself from forces you've invited in. You can't cast out demons you've given authority to. I had opened my door, my life, my soul to darkness, and it was moving in permanently. That's when the real terror began. But I still had one foot in the occult. I was still taking clients. I was still performing rituals. Because I didn't know how to stop. I didn't know where to turn. The church I had abandoned years earlier felt like it belonged to a different world. A weaker world. A world that couldn't help me with what I had gotten myself into. I thought I had gone too far. I thought I was beyond redemption. I thought the only option was to go deeper, to gain more power, to become strong enough to control the forces I had unleashed. I was so wrong. The second sign of demonic infestation is escalating household conflict without rational cause. This is where it gets really insidious. The cold spots are environmental. You can measure them. You can point to them. But the conflicts? They look completely natural. They look like normal human dysfunction. Except they're not. They're spiritually amplified. They're demonically engineered. And they escalate faster and more violently than any natural conflict should. I saw this in almost every home where I performed rituals. Within weeks, families that had been functional, that had normal disagreements and normal tensions, would descend into warfare. Husbands and wives who had been married for decades would suddenly be screaming at each other over trivial things. Parents and children who had loving relationships would become hostile strangers. Siblings who had been close would stop speaking entirely. And none of them could explain why. They'd say things like, "I don't know what's wrong with me," or "This isn't like us," or "I can't control my anger anymore." That's because it wasn't just them. There were spiritual forces amplifying every disagreement, twisting every word, inflaming every emotion. Demons feed on conflict. They feed on hatred, bitterness, unforgiveness, rage. So when they infest a home, they work to create as much of those emotions as possible. They whisper thoughts. They distort perceptions. They magnify offenses. They remind you of every hurt, every betrayal, every disappointment. They make small irritations feel like major betrayals. They turn misunderstandings into wars. And families destroy themselves from the inside out, never realizing they're being manipulated by forces they can't see. I had one client, a man in his 40s, who hired me to perform a ritual for career advancement. He got the promotion he wanted, but within a month, his marriage was falling apart. His teenage son became violent. His daughter started cutting herself. The house felt like a war zone. And he blamed himself, blamed his wife, blamed his kids, blamed the stress of his new job. He never connected it to the ritual I had performed in his home office. He never realized that the success he gained came with a price, the destruction of his family's peace. That's when I started to realize the pattern. Every ritual had consequences. Every door I opened led somewhere dark. Every client who got what they wanted lost something more valuable. And I was the one doing it to them. I was the weapon demons were using against these families. And the guilt started to crush me. But here's what you need to understand. These conflicts aren't just random chaos. They follow patterns. They target the weakest points in relationships. If there's unresolved hurt, demons will keep it unresolved. If there's a communication breakdown, they'll make it worse. If there's a buried resentment, they'll bring it to the surface in the most destructive way possible. They're strategic. They're intelligent. They know exactly how to dismantle human relationships because they've been studying humanity for thousands of years. And when you give them access to your home through occult practices, through unforgiveness, through generational curses, through unconfessed sin, they will use every weakness they find against you. If you're experiencing escalating conflict in your home that doesn't make sense, that feels spiritually oppressive, that leaves you feeling drained and hopeless, Pay attention. You might be dealing with more than just human dysfunction. You might be dealing with demonic amplification. And you need spiritual help, not just therapy or communication techniques. You need deliverance. You need prayer. You need to close whatever doors have been opened in your home. I know this because I lived it. Not just as the practitioner, but as the victim. The conflicts in my own life became unbearable. I fought with everyone. I pushed away anyone who cared about me. I became isolated, angry, paranoid, violent. And I couldn't stop. It felt like something else was controlling me, pulling strings, making me say and do things I didn't want to say or do. Because something was. The entities I had been serving were now serving themselves to my life. They had moved from being tools I used to being forces that used me. And I had no idea how to fight back. That's when the third sign appeared, the one that broke me completely. But listen closely. If you see this sign, it might already be too late. You need to recognize the earlier sign so you can act before it reaches the third stage. Because once you see the third sign, you're not dealing with infestation anymore. You're dealing with manifestation. And manifestation means they've moved from the shadows into visibility. It means they're confident enough in their control to show themselves. It means you've reached the crisis point. And everything gets harder from there. But the first two signs? They're warnings you still have time to act on. The cold spots mean they're testing. The conflicts mean they're establishing. And if you recognize them, if you respond spiritually, if you seek help from people who understand spiritual warfare, you can still shut them out. You can still protect your family. You can still reclaim your home. I didn't recognize them when I should have. I ignored every warning. I rationalized every sign. I convinced myself I was strong enough to handle it. And I almost lost everything. My sanity, my humanity, my soul. The only reason I'm here today, the only reason I can warn you, is because of Father Miguel. Because of what he did for me when I finally broke down and asked for help. Because of the deliverance process that freed me from the bondage I had chosen. But that's part of the second half of this story. The redemption arc. The liberation. The transformation from someone who opened doors for demons to someone who now teaches people how to close them. Right now, you need to know about the signs. You need to know what to look for. You need to understand that spiritual warfare is real, that demonic infestation is real, and that it's happening in more homes than you'd ever imagine. Check your house tonight. Walk through your rooms. Pay attention to the temperature. Notice where the cold spots are, if they exist. Notice where your family avoids gathering. Notice which spaces feel wrong, heavy, oppressive. Ask yourself if conflicts in your home feel spiritually amplified. Ask yourself if there's anger, bitterness, or rage that seems bigger than its natural causes. Be honest about whether you've opened any spiritual doors. Occult practices, even casual ones. Unforgiveness that you're nursing. Generational patterns of dysfunction that keep repeating. These are doorways, and if they're open, you need to close them. But the first two signs? They're warnings. The third sign is the one that haunts me most, the one that wakes me up at night in a cold sweat, the one that still makes my hands shake when I think about it. The third sign is how I learned that demons aren't content to stay in the shadows forever. They're not content to influence from a distance. Eventually, they want to show themselves. They want you to know they're there. They want to break you with the knowledge of your own powerlessness against them. And the object they use to reveal themselves is something you look at every single day. Something in every home, every bathroom, every bedroom. Something so ordinary you'd never suspect it could become a portal. It's your mirror. I learned this the hard way. I learned this through the most terrifying client case I ever handled. I learned this through an experience that made me realize I wasn't in control of anything. That I had never been in control. That I was a puppet being used by forces that had been deceiving me from the beginning. And when I saw what manifested in that mirror, When I saw the reflection that wasn't a reflection. When I saw the face that stared back at me with intelligence, with malice, with recognition. I knew I was in over my head. I knew I needed help from a power greater than what I had been serving. I knew that darkness cannot cast out darkness. Only light can do that. If you see something wrong in your mirror, if your reflection delays, if shadows appear where they shouldn't, you're already at the crisis point. This isn't just a warning, it's a declaration. It's demons saying, "We're here, we're not leaving." If you haven't reached that stage yet, if it's just cold spots or conflicts, act now. Don't wait until manifestation forces you to confront what you've been ignoring. Because I didn't act in time. And what happened to me? What I experienced when I finally hit rock bottom and saw the third sign in my own apartment. It's why I'm here now. It's why I'm telling you this story. It's why I spend every day trying to warn people about realities I used to exploit. It's why Father Miguel's intervention in my life changed everything. But that comes next. The third sign. The mirror. The manifestation. The breaking point. The moment I realized I had been serving my own destruction for 5 years and calling it power. The night everything changed, and I had to choose between doubling down on darkness or crying out to a light I wasn't sure would hear me. That's the story I'll tell you next. The story of the mirror, the manifestation, and the man who taught me that demons only have the power you give them, and that there's a greater power that can take it all back. The night I saw the third sign in my own apartment, I finally understood what I had been doing to people for 5 years. I finally understood the depth of my evil. Because up until that moment, I had convinced myself I was helping them, giving them power, giving them control over their circumstances. That's what I told myself every time I performed a ritual. Every time I drew symbols on floors and mirrors. Every time I whispered incantations that I knew would open doors that should never be opened. But the truth? The truth I've been avoiding since I started telling you this story? I entered the occult because I was desperate. 28 years old, broke, unemployed, watching everyone around me succeed while I failed at everything I touched. And then I met someone who promised me that spiritual forces could change everything. Not God. Not prayer, not faith. Spiritual forces that were older than Christianity. Forces that had been suppressed by religion because they were too powerful, too effective, too real. And like an idiot, like a spiritually blind fool stumbling toward his own destruction, I believed it. I believed I could tap into power without consequences. I believed the darkness would serve me without demanding payment. I believed 5 years of lies until the night the payment came due. It was 3 in the morning. I had just gotten home from performing a ritual for a wealthy client, a businessman who wanted protection for his family, protection from rivals, protection from failure. I performed the mirror ritual. That's what we called it in the circles I moved in, the mirror ritual. You take a large mirror, you place it in the center of the home, you draw specific symbols around the frame in oil mixed with ash, and you perform an invocation that essentially invites protective spirits to watch over the family through the mirror. That's what we told clients. Protective spirits, guardians, benevolent forces. But what I was really doing was creating a portal. A doorway specifically designed to allow demonic entities to enter whenever they wanted. And the payment was always the same. Access. That night, I came home exhausted, spiritually drained. There's a cost to performing these rituals, a cost I felt more and more with each one. It's like something inside you dies a little every time you invite darkness into someone's home. But I ignored it, pushed it down, told myself it was just fatigue, just the mental strain of concentration. I walked into my bathroom to wash my hands. The smell of the ritual oil was still on my skin. That mixture of sulfur and something sweet that I can still smell sometimes when I close my eyes. And as I stood at the sink, water running, I glanced up at the mirror. Just a casual glance. The kind of glance you make 100 times a day without thinking. Except my reflection didn't glance back at the same time. I need you to understand something. This wasn't a trick of light. This wasn't fatigue or imagination or psychological stress. There was a delay. I looked up at the mirror, and for maybe half a second, my reflection continued looking down at the sink before it caught up and met my eyes. Half a second, that's all. But half a second is an eternity when you're staring at your own face and realizing it's moving independently. I froze. Every instinct in my body screamed that something was wrong, that I needed to leave, that I needed to run. But I couldn't move. I just stood there, hands dripping water into the sink, staring at my reflection, waiting to see if it would happen again. And it did. I moved my hand to turn off the faucet. My reflection moved a fraction of a second later. It wasn't mirroring me. It was copying me, mimicking me with just enough delay to let me know it wasn't me. That's when I saw the shadow, behind my reflection, in the mirror. Standing in the doorway of my bathroom, even though when I spun around, physically turned my body to look at the actual doorway, nothing was there, empty. But in the mirror, there was a shape. Tall. Humanoid but wrong. Proportions that didn't make sense. Limbs that were too long. Shoulders that were too wide. A head that tilted at an angle that would break a human neck. And it was smiling. I don't know how I knew it was smiling. I couldn't see a face, couldn't see features. Just this dark shape behind my reflection. But I knew. I felt it. The same way you feel someone staring at you from across a room. The same way you know when you're being watched. I felt its smile, felt its satisfaction, felt its presence wrapping around me like smoke. This is the third sign. This is the sign that means you've moved beyond warning, beyond early intervention, beyond the point where prayer alone might cleanse your home. This is the sign that says they're manifesting. They're showing themselves. They're declaring their presence because they're confident you can't do anything about it, or because they want you to know. Want you to understand that you're not alone in your house, that you've never been alone, that every moment you thought you had privacy, they were watching. Mirror distortions, reflections that delay, shadows that appear in the glass when nothing stands in the physical space, faces that look wrong, that shift when you're not quite looking directly at them. That smile when you're terrified. This is the crisis point. This is demons saying we're here, we're staying, and you invited us. I stumbled backward, away from the mirror, my heart hammering so hard I thought it would break through my ribs. And as I moved, the shadow in the mirror moved too. Not mimicking me, moving independently, stepping forward, closer to where my reflection stood. Reaching out with those two long arms toward the back of my reflection's head. That's when I ran. Burst out of the bathroom, into my bedroom, slammed the door, stood there shaking, trying to process what I had just seen. Trying to convince myself it wasn't real. That I had imagined it. That 5 years of occult practice had finally broken something in my mind, and I was seeing things that weren't there. But I knew. Deep down, beneath the denial and the fear and the desperate rationalization, I knew. I had spent 5 years opening doors for demons. I had invited them into dozens of homes, created portals and mirrors and windows and reflective surfaces, given them legal right to manifest in families' lives. And now they were manifesting in mine. Now they were showing me what I had been doing to others. Now, they were teaching me that servants of darkness are never safe from darkness. That you can't control what you invite. That the moment you open the door, you become a target too. I didn't sleep that night. Sat on my bed, lights on, avoiding every reflective surface in my apartment. The window, the television screen, the glass on the picture frames. Anything that could show me a reflection felt dangerous. Felt like a potential doorway for that shadow to reach through. And as the hours crawled by, as night bled into dawn, I realized something that terrified me more than the shadow itself. I realized I couldn't stop. Couldn't just walk away from the occult. couldn't quit performing rituals, couldn't close the doors I had opened. Because I had made contracts, spiritual contracts, agreements with entities that don't accept resignation letters, that don't honor human decisions to change paths. I was bound, owned, property of the darkness I had served for 5 years. That's when the oppression started. Not just the mirror, not just the shadows, physical oppression, spiritual oppression. The kind that makes you feel like there's a weight on your chest when you try to sleep. Like invisible hands are pressing down, suffocating you. The kind that fills your apartment with cold so intense you can see your breath in the middle of summer. The kind that whispers your name at 3 in the morning in voices that sound like gravel and broken glass. I tried everything I knew. Protection spells, banishing rituals, salt lines, crystals. Every occult defense I had learned in 5 years, and nothing worked. Nothing. Because you can't use darkness to fight darkness. You can't use demonic methods to fight demonic oppression. It's like trying to put out a fire by pouring gasoline on it. All you do is make it worse, give them more access, more legal right to torment you. I was dying. Not physically. Not yet. But spiritually. Mentally. Emotionally. I could feel myself unraveling. Feel my sanity slipping away piece by piece every night as the oppression intensified. And I knew, with absolute certainty, that if I didn't find help soon, I would either lose my mind completely or do something to end the torment permanently. And I think that's what they wanted. I think that's what demons always want. They whisper lies until you believe them. They apply pressure until you break. They isolate you until suicide feels like the only escape. I didn't know where to turn. I couldn't go back to my occult contacts because they either couldn't help or wouldn't help. I couldn't go to a hospital because what was I going to tell them? That shadows in my mirror were trying to kill me. They would have locked me in a psychiatric ward. I couldn't tell my family because I had cut them off years ago when I entered the occult, burned those bridges with my arrogance and my rebellion and my absolute certainty that I knew better than everyone else. So I did the only thing I could think of. I walked into a church. Not because I believed. Not because I thought it would work. But because I was desperate. Because I was out of options. Because some distant memory from childhood whispered that maybe, just maybe, there was a power greater than what I had been serving. And maybe that power could help me. It was a small Catholic church in São Paulo. Mid-afternoon. Empty except for an older priest kneeling in front of the altar, praying. I stood in the doorway, every instinct screaming at me to leave, feeling physically ill just from being in that space. Because when you've given yourself to darkness for 5 years, walking into a place of light feels like walking into fire. The priest turned. Gray hair, weathered face, kind eyes. He looked at me and I swear he knew what I was, knew what I had done, knew why I was there. He didn't say anything, just stood, walked toward me, and asked one simple question, "Do you want to be free?" I broke. Right there in the doorway of that church, collapsed to my knees and broke. Because yes, I wanted to be free. I wanted the shadows to stop. I wanted the oppression to end. I wanted my life back. I wanted to sleep without feeling hands around my throat. I wanted to look in a mirror without seeing things that shouldn't exist. I wanted freedom more than I had ever wanted anything. His name was Father Miguel Ferreira. He had been a priest for 30 years, specializing in spiritual deliverance ministry, which is a formal way of saying he spent his life fighting demons and freeing people from spiritual bondage. He had seen everything: possessions, oppressions, infestations, people who had dabbled in occult practices, and people who had spent decades deep in darkness. He knew what he was dealing with the moment he looked at me. He took me to a small prayer room, sat me down, and then he said something that changed everything. He said confession is the first step to liberation. Total confession. complete transparency. Every ritual, every contract, every door I had opened. Because demons thrive in secrecy. They thrive in shame. They thrive in the parts of your life you hide because you're too afraid or too ashamed to bring into the light. And the only way to break their power is to bring everything into the light, confess it all, and let God's authority sever the legal rights you've given them. I didn't want to. The thought of confessing everything, of admitting the full extent of what I had done, felt impossible. Felt like it would destroy me. But Father Miguel was patient, firm but gentle. He explained that demons only have the power we give them. That every ritual I performed, every contract I made, was me giving permission. And that permission could be revoked, but only if I was willing to confess, repent, and submit to God's authority. So I confessed. For hours. I told him about the 5 years, the rituals, the clients, the mirror portals, the contracts, the entities I had invoked, the families I had harmed by opening doors in their homes. I told him about the businessman whose family descended into violence after I performed the ritual, about the woman whose marriage fell apart, about the teenager who started hearing voices after I drew symbols on her bedroom mirror. I confessed the scar on my arm, the burn I received during a ritual that went wrong when I was still learning, when I didn't understand the cost of mistakes in spiritual warfare. And with every confession, I felt something lift, like weights being removed from my chest one by one, like chains breaking, like prison doors opening. It wasn't instant, it wasn't dramatic, but it was real, tangible. The oppression that had been crushing me for weeks started to ease. Father Miguel prayed over me. Not the kind of prayer I was used to. Not manipulation or bargaining with spiritual forces. Just simple, authoritative prayer, renouncing every contract I had made, commanding every entity to leave in the name of Jesus Christ, declaring that I was no longer property of darkness, but a child of God protected by divine authority. And they left. I felt it, felt them leave, like pressure releasing, like air rushing back into lungs that had been drowning. The cold that had followed me for weeks vanished. The whispers stopped. The sense of being watched, of being hunted, dissolved. For the first time in months, I felt clean, light, free. Father Miguel explained that deliverance isn't just about removing demons. It's about filling the space they leave with something greater. Because if you cast out darkness but don't fill the void with light, the darkness just comes back stronger. So I stayed in that church, stayed under Father Miguel's guidance, learned about the authority that comes from God, not from occult practices, learned about the spiritual warfare that Christians fight, not with rituals and symbols, but with prayer and faith and the power of Christ's sacrifice. It took months. Months of discipleship, of healing, of learning to renounce my past and walk in a new identity. Months of Father Miguel teaching me that everything I thought I knew about spiritual power was backwards. That real power doesn't come from controlling demons. It comes from submitting to God. That real authority doesn't come from occult knowledge. It comes from relationship with the one who created everything, who has authority over everything, who demons actually fear. And through that process, Father Miguel gave me a mission. He said I had spent 5 years opening doors for demons. Now I needed to spend my life teaching people how to close those doors. He said my testimony, my experience, my insider knowledge of how demons operate, all of it could be redeemed, could be used to protect people instead of harm them, could be transformed from a weapon of darkness into a weapon of light. So that's what I do now. That's why I'm telling you this story. That's why I'm exposing these 3 signs, even though reliving these memories, describing these experiences, costs me something every single time. Because I know what demons do. I know how they enter. I know how they establish strongholds. And I know the signs they leave behind when they infest a home. These aren't theories or religious superstitions. These are realities I witnessed, realities I caused, and realities I now help people resist. If you're experiencing the third sign, if you're seeing delays in your reflection, shadows that shouldn't exist, faces that look wrong in mirrors or windows or any reflective surface, you need help immediately. This isn't something you can handle alone. This isn't something you can fix with positive thinking or self-help techniques, or even standard prayer if you don't know what you're dealing with. You need spiritual authority. You need someone like Father Miguel. You need deliverance ministry, confession, renunciation of any doors you might have opened knowingly or unknowingly. Because maybe you dabbled in occult practices. Maybe you used a Ouija board. Maybe you consulted psychics or mediums. Maybe you brought objects into your home that carried spiritual attachments, things from other cultures or religions that you didn't understand. Maybe you watched your kids play with apps or games that involved summoning spirits as a joke. Maybe you just moved into a house where previous owners performed rituals you knew nothing about. There are 1,000 ways to open doors, and demons don't need big openings. They just need cracks, permission, legal rights. But here's the truth. Father Miguel taught me. The truth that set me free, and the truth I need you to understand. Demons only have the power you give them. The rituals I performed, the contracts I made, they were all based on permission, on humans granting access. And that access can be revoked. Those doors can be closed. That authority can be broken. But you have to do it the right way. You have to do it through the one power demons actually fear. Not human willpower, not occult defenses, not positive energy or spiritual techniques. The power of Jesus Christ. The authority that comes from the cross, from the sacrifice that defeated death and hell and every spiritual force aligned against humanity. I know some of you don't want to hear that. I know it sounds religious, restrictive, narrow. I felt the same way for 5 years. I rejected Christianity specifically because I thought it was limiting, thought there were other paths to power, thought enlightenment could be found in ancient practices that the church had suppressed. And I was wrong, catastrophically wrong. I opened myself to forces that nearly destroyed me, forces that would have destroyed me if Father Miguel hadn't shown me the way out. So check your mirrors tonight. Check them carefully. Look for delays in your reflection. Look for shadows that don't match reality. Look for anything wrong, anything off, anything that makes you feel watched or uncomfortable. And if you see the third sign, if you see manifestation, don't ignore it. Don't rationalize it. Don't try to handle it yourself. Seek help. Find a church that does deliverance ministry. Find a priest or pastor who understands spiritual warfare. Confess any doors you might have opened. Ask God to protect your family, to cleanse your home, to sever any legal rights demons might have. But even if you're not at the crisis point, even if you've only seen the first 2 signs or none of them, take this seriously. Pray over your home. Ask God to reveal any hidden doors, any spiritual vulnerabilities you're not aware of. Create an environment of light and peace and divine presence that darkness can't tolerate. Read scripture, worship. Invite the Holy Spirit to fill every room. Because the best defense against demonic infestation isn't reacting after they enter. It's making sure they never have permission to enter in the first place. I spent 5 years helping demons enter homes. I performed rituals. I opened portals. I destroyed families. I carry that guilt every day. But Father Miguel taught me that guilt redeemed is more powerful than guilt that crushes. He taught me that my past can be transformed into protection for others, that my testimony can be a warning, that the authority I once used to harm can be redeemed to heal. And that's why I'm here. That's why I tell this story, even when it's painful, even when I have to relive the worst moments of my life, even when I see your comments questioning my credibility or mocking my conversion. Because some of you watching this right now are experiencing these signs. Some of you are living in homes where demons have established strongholds. Some of you are feeling the oppression, the cold, the conflict, the manifestations. And you need to know there's hope. You need to know there's a way out. You need to know that the same power that freed me can free you. Don't wait until the third sign appears. Don't wait until you're staring at your reflection and realizing it's not you anymore. Don't wait until shadows manifest and you're facing the full reality of spiritual evil in your own home. Act now. Pray now. Seek help now. Close the doors now before the manifestation forces you to. Because I didn't act in time. I waited until I was broken. Until I was desperate. Until I had nowhere else to turn. And I nearly didn't survive. I nearly lost everything, including my sanity and my soul. But Father Miguel's intervention saved me. God's mercy saved me. And now I spend every day trying to help others find that same freedom before they reach the breaking point I reached. Spiritual warfare is real whether you believe in it or not. Demons don't need your belief, they just need your permission. And once you give it, they will not leave willingly. But there is power greater than darkness. There is authority that demons must obey. There is freedom available for anyone willing to confess, repent, and submit to the one who has already won the war against evil. His name is Jesus Christ. And he's the reason I'm alive. The reason I'm free. The reason I can stand here and warn you about the reality I used to serve. May God protect your homes. May he reveal any hidden doors. May he give you wisdom to recognize these signs and courage to act when you see them. And may you never have to learn these truths the way I did, through 5 years of serving darkness before finally running into the light. Check your mirrors, protect your families, and remember that demons only have the power you give them. Take back that power, close those doors, and live in the authority that comes from the one who conquered death itself.